Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the episode of Lackawanna Pastimes. We'll be joined today by LHS member George Pawlush, who will be sharing some of his research about the Carpatho-Rusyn immigrant community and their ties to sports. George is head of Carpatho-Rusyn descent himself, grew up in Oliphant. He's the author of a recent book, They Came to Play. As I said, he'll be talking a little bit about the history of Carpatho-Rusyn immigration and introducing five figures who have ties to the sports community from Lackawanna County. George, I'm going to turn the program over to you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for participating in today's program. Today, I'm going to talk about who are the Carpatho-Rusyns. I'm going to talk about their immigration to America, the challenge they faced as new immigrants, and how their sons quickly adapted to American sports, and how their success impacted the Carpatho-Rusyn community. And I'm going to end with five profiles of people, athletes who came from Lackawanna County and distinguished themselves nationally. So here is a map of Carpathian Rus. It's located right in the middle of Europe. And the homeland of the Carpatho-Rusyns was Carpathian Rus, and it's located in the Carpathian Mountains, where the borders of Poland, Ukraine, and Slovakia intersect. It's roughly 7,000 square miles. To give you a comparison, that would be about the size of New Jersey, or eastern Pennsylvania plus the metropolitan New York area, so combined. So 7,000 square miles. And Carpathian Rus was a region in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which ceased to exist at the end of World War I. And at that time, it was split up into the three countries where it intersects. That's Ukraine, Slovakia, and Poland. And actually, for one day in 1939, Carpathian Rus was a country. And unfortunately, that's all it lasted, one day. Logically, if Carpathian Rus at the end of World War I, when they were dividing and creating Czechoslovakia and some other countries, that would have been the time to make Carpathian Rus a nation. But unfortunately, although there were discussions about this, it just never came to fore. The terrain of Carpathian Rusyn is very, very rocky, hilly, and really not suitable for farming. And about 80% of the Rusyns were involved with farming. And other things that they were involved in were they worked as herders, petty craftsmen, miners, and hunters. But basically, the main jobs that they had to support their families was farming. And the Rusyns typically settled together in small villages where they could work together. And these villages were really only maybe 8 to 30 houses. They weren't cities, they were villages, and they were at least over 1,000 villages scattered over, like I said, an area as large as New Jersey. There was a picture that just passed of the terrain, and this is pretty much typical of the whole country. It's very mountainous and, again, not suitable for agriculture, which, again, people were very much part of. The Carpatho-Rusyn spoke in a Slavic tongue and used the Cyrillic alphabet, similar to Russia and other Slavic countries. The people owned tiny plats of land called dwarf farms that were usually less than 5 acres, very small. But the Rusyns were very, very proud of being landowners, even though their gardens were not productive as they would have liked. they still, the 5-acre farm meant a lot to them. And during the summers, just to make more money, some of the men would travel down to the plains of Hungary where they could find work and be able to make some money and bring home, and perhaps that would help, in buying feed and whatever provisions that they needed. They were very poor and culturally backward. Between 1880 and 1900, the Rusyns had to deal with several economic issues. First of all, there was a prolonged depression in Rusyn, Carpatho-Rus, and it was also evident in all neighboring Eastern European countries. And there was a sudden population increase it really wasn't sudden, but it is over a period of 20 or 30 years because of modern advancements in medicine. The population grew rapidly. Unfortunately, it grew, and many people had really no way of acquiring land and having a steady job. So, they began thinking of what they could do. And there was always a constant threat of war. As I said, Carpathian Rus was right in the middle of Europe, right in between Russia and Germany and so on. So there was always a fear of a war breaking out. And it really, as I said, became more difficult for the Rusyns to maintain their livelihoods. So again, coming to America, during this time, American industry was really growing in the steel mills and also in the mines. And they were really short of workers. And there were many of these mine and steel magnates. What they did was they sent agents over to Carpathian Rus, and were looking for workers. And if people were interested, the company would pay for their passage. And many younger Russian males took advantage of this opportunity. As they settled and got settled into America, they wrote letters home, and again, a lot of their friends and family became interested, and eventually also opted to go to America. The mine owners and steel work owners viewed the Rusyns as cheap labor. Agents knew that the Rusyns were hard workers who would accept low wages and would put up with working conditions that other English-speaking predecessors would not tolerate. And initially, most of the people who came over to America intended to work in America for a few years and then return to their homeland with money to buy a farm or equipment. And again, their long-term goal was not to stay in America, but more and more, many decided not to come back to Carpathian Rus. Others, prior to 1903, most Rusyns had made their way to German ports of Hamburg and Bremen. This was in Germany. And again, that was a task in itself. It took 2 or 3 days of either train travel or travel on the roads to get to these ports. And once they got to the ports, they boarded the ships. And the ships that they boarded were basically confined in the steerage part of the board of the boats. And if you know anything about steerage is the lowest level on a boat. And basically, when the boats were built, it was designed really to carry equipment and other goods. So they weren't really designed to hold people. But anyway, people who got out of the boats really were confined to steerage. And it took at that time 3 to 4 weeks to get from Bremen to America. And in this area where they were kept, there were no portholes, so they couldn't see the light of day. And ventilation or proper sanitation and the smell was intolerable. There was really, again, it was really a tough situation for people to come over, and there were some people who really didn't make the 3 to 4 weeks and died before they got to America. The places where they slept in bunk beds in areas that measured only 6 to 8 feet in height. And again, the whole bottom of steerage was crowded with these bunk beds, and that's where they took their meals. It wasn't like they could go up on top of the deck and see what was going on. They were very much confined to the steerage area. So once they got to America, they offboarded on New York Harbor. And there were ferries that would then take them over to Ellis Island. Ellis Island is sort of in the middle of New York Harbor, more closer to New Jersey than it is to New York. But anyway, they got there by ferries, and once they got to Ellis Island, they had a medical examination. Their medical history was taken. They had to tell the inspectors there where they were going, and they had to tell them how much money they had in their hand. And once they satisfied that requirement, they were able to leave. Now, this is where some of the problems I know with names came in, and a lot of names were misspelled here at Ellis Island. The immigration officers were not sympathetic with the immigrants, and sometimes just put a name down and really didn't take an extra minute to try to be as accurate as possible. And some people then also acquired new last names. Now, where do the Rusyns settle? 54% settled in Pennsylvania, 13% settled in New York, and 12% settled in New Jersey. And they also really, the other remaining percent, many of them traveled to the industrial centers of Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago, and Minneapolis. And that's really where they found work. Now, there were many Rusyns who initially came to work in the mines, and after a couple of years realized that was not for them. And many of them wound up in other towns. And one particular, many from Northeast who had worked the mines in northeastern PA decided to went up to the Elmira area where Endicott Johnson was situated. And there they found work in the factories there, which had really good benefits and everything. So that, again, once they arrived and after a couple of years, then they might leave and go to another area of the nation. Now, the next challenge they have was finding a home where to live. The picture here is actually of my great-grandparents, Harry and Anna Blanier, and they had a rooming house and a restaurant in Oliphant, and actually had rooms that some of these newcomers came in and stayed at their house, for a couple of months or a year or whatever, and while there, they were, for their rent, they had the room, and they were provided meals and their laundry being taken care of. And it was really a sort of a benefit too for the owner, because in addition, to if he was working in the mines, uh, he and his wife would have extra income. When I say rooming house, it might have been only one or two rooms that these people were able to rent. But anyway, it was an opportunity until they got on their feet and got their families over from Europe. It was an opportunity for them to at least make a stake in America. Now, there was other people, those who were recruited by the mines and the steel mills. Many of the companies had their own housing, company housing, and they were located near their work locations. And the rent, they were charged rent, and the rent came out of their salary at the end. Every 2 weeks they were paid, and as part of their bill, a part of that was taken out for company housing. Workers were paid at that time in money and coupons or scrip that could only be redeemed at the company store. And I think there's been much said. Tennessee, I think not Tennessee Williams. There was a song out about the company store, and basically this is where people shop. They had to shop at the company store, and the prices of goods were often 2 to 3 times more expensive than they could have been found in town. But without the money and only coupons, the only place they could really shop and use those coupons was the company store. So many of these workers who came over and went in the mines found at the end of the 2 weeks that virtually everything was accounted for, and they could save very, very little. And really, it was the mine owners who basically benefit and just about got free work from these people. In the company housing, I know in Western Pennsylvania, the housing was in many of the towns was really divided into various areas, and in one area it would be the immigrants who had come from Italy and Ireland would be in that one section. There might have been another section of the company towns where other ethnic groups would be housed, and finally there was a separate section for African Americans. So again, there was really a separation of the different ethnic groups, and it was tough working at either the mines or the mills, because they had rules as such that when if someone had, let's say, been killed in the mines, basically the family in the company home would have to leave the home in 1 or 2 days. They really, that's how it was organized and structured. And again, many times the worker killed in the mines would be dropped off and delivered on the porch of these families. So it was really a tough situation. And again, and many times it's been said that the people who worked in the mines and who came from Eastern Europe, especially, were really treated not as human beings, but almost as slaves, and it was really a tough life for them. Now, the Rusyns really, prior to World War I, really didn't place a high priority on education, and as a result, their kids really only went up to maybe 6th grade in school, and boys as young as 8 years old worked in the coal breakers, separating the coal from the slate. And these kids, as they were going out and getting jobs to help support the family, all their earnings again was brought back and pooled with the family finances. So that's really how they lived. The whole family really worked together to survive. Now, working in the steel mills and the mines was really, really very dangerous. The mines worked 10-hour shifts. Sometimes they worked 7 days a week. They were paid accordingly to the amount of coal that they mined. And, you know, after entering the mine in the morning or in the evening, if there were two shifts, workers would have to maybe travel a couple miles underground in darkness and cramped quarters to find the area where they were working. The workers had to be constantly aware of mine cave-ins and poisonous and explosive gases. Almost every family had a member who was either killed or severely injured. It was a very dangerous occupation. And to top it off, that after working for 20, 30 years, many of these miners came home with black lung disease, which is really it's pneumoconiosis. And again, they got this from inhaling the coal dust. And actually, with many people, it really shortened their lives. So, very few miners really reached 70 years old because, again, if they weren't hurt in the mines or disabled somewhat, they picked up this coal dust, and again, their post work days were really, really very difficult. Now, in coming to America, prior to arriving, Rusyns had no idea to the extent of America's obsession with playing and watching competitive sports. First generation Rusyn Americans were eager to assimilate themselves in American life. And because of their Rusyn values that stressed hard work, self-reliance, and teamwork, they easily adapted to boxing and team sports like baseball and basketball. Boxing offered Rusyns an opportunity to earn fast money and quick fame. The picture you see there is Latso, who was one of the people who distinguished themselves in boxing. Pete was won a world championship in Scranton, and I'll talk a little bit about him later. Here he is pictured in 2 years after winning his title. He had to move up two classes, and he's shown pre in the weigh-in with Tommy Laughlin, but anyway, Rusyns and as also a lot of the other Eastern European Europeans really enjoyed and loved boxing, and there were many shows throughout Eastern Pennsylvania. And boxing was very big in Eastern Pennsylvania, and to ensure that they got big crowds, they would often play one ethnic group against another, and every ethnic group had its boxing hero. And again, their families and friends followed these boxers to the various places where they box. Scranton and Wilkes-Barre were big boxing centers and had many title fights were based there. Also, New York, Polo Grounds, Madison Square Garden were other venues where there were a lot of professional boxing shows. And also Philadelphia was another site where a lot of these bouts were held. And during the 20s, as I said before, Pete Latso was a world champion, as was John Jadek, who came from Philadelphia. During the first half of the 20th century, baseball was really America's most popular sport. And here's a picture that was taken in 1950, and number 21 is Annie Semenuk. And Andy was a member of the catcher of the 1950 Phillies team that won the National League pennant. Here he is. He had just tagged Duke Snider out of the Brooklyn Dodgers, and he was throwing on to third base. And baseball was a true combination of individual and team efforts that epitomized the American dream. It was a game without class or ethnic barriers that appealed to Russian immigrants and was very popular in the ethnic communities. For those who labored in the mines and mills, local Sunday baseball games were very important during the pre-World War II years. They were a big source of entertainment for the family. After attending church, people would go home, get dressed, and then go to the local baseball park. And they sold beverages and they sold food there. And that's where the family stayed pretty much the whole afternoon. As I said, it was with their men working 6 days and sometimes 7 days a week. Well, it was their only form of entertainment, and again, they really turned out for these games. And every town, and within a town at this time, there were certain areas in a town called patches, and many of these patches and towns had baseball teams. So on these Sunday games, they were really a lot of more rivalry games that really attracted a lot of interest. Now, professional football, and that's a picture of Andy Urim. Andy came from Minneapolis, and here he is in a uniform of the Green Bay Packers. Professional football started gaining prominence in the 1930s and escalated after the end of World War II. Professional football helped Rusyns reach a measure of inclusion into mainstream America. The rough physical nature of the game appealed to their sons. In Pennsylvania, high school football was king, especially in the mining and steel mill communities. It was, as was baseball, an exciting diversion for the workers and their families. It was not uncommon in some towns where Sunday or Saturday games were played that the whole town would close up, businesses would close up, and everyone would turn out and show up at the local football stadium. And again, at this time, college football was also gaining a lot of popularity and really had been popular in the years prior to 1930. And college coaches showed up in droves to these games because they saw some outstanding people playing and thought they would be great candidates for their teams. As a result, many of these players from the Rusyn communities received college scholarships that enable them to be exposed to new educational and social experiences. And again, it was an opportunity for them to get an education and really progress in the social world. Now, the next picture we have is of Tom Ridge, and the 45 people that were profiled in my book served as an inspiration to other Americans with a Rusyn and ancestral roots. They demonstrated to their fellow Rusyn Americans that with persistence and a strong will, they too could find success in whatever career they chose. By 1960, many second-generation Rusyns had earned college degrees and were making their way up the social ladder. Tom Ridge, who came from Munhall in Western PA, was just one of those Rusyns who began assuming a major leadership roles in American government, business, industry, education, and healthcare. Other well-known public figures with Russian roots included artist Andy Warhol, movie stars Elizabeth Scott, who did come from Scranton, Meg Ryan, and Robert Ulrich, comic artist Steve Disco, and LED inventor Nick Holoniak. Social commentators have identified sports as the glue that united America, a nation of diverse classes, racial groups, and competing loyalties. Sports has given those with Russian heritage the means to disprove ethnic stereotypes, develop ethnic pride, become Americanized, and gain greater respect from the broader communities. And now I'd like to introduce you to five athletes and others associated with the sports who came from Lackawanna County. First of all is Nestor Shylock. And Nestor grew up in Oliphant and graduated from Oliphant High School. And after finishing high school, he went to St. Thomas College, which is now Scranton University, but his college years were cut short. During World War II, he joined the Army and served overseas. And it was actually at the Battle of the Bulge where he was hit by shrapnel, and he was blinded. And for about 8 weeks, he was in a hospital, not knowing if he was able to see again. And fortunately, he was. And after leaving the hospital, rather than going back to college, he decided that he wanted to umpire on a full-time basis. And he went through a series of 4 or 5 years where he umpired in the minor leagues, and eventually he did make it to the major leagues. Shylock was regarded as one of the most outstanding major league umpires in the latter half of the 20th century. He worked in the American League from 1954 to 1978 and participated in 5 World Series and 4 All-Star games. He was also behind the plate of the final Sandy Koufax's final game in the 1966 World Series, and he was also behind the plate in Toronto for the Toronto Blue Jays' first game in 1977. Shylock was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame by Veterans Committee in 1999, just the 8th umpire to be inducted. And he was really well regarded by players, coaches, and executives as a fine umpire. Next, we have Mike Gazzella. Mike Gazzella also is an Oliphant native, and he is considered one of the luckiest players in World Series history. He actually spent 4 years as a bench warmer as a utility infielder for the Yankees during the 1920s. And all 4 years that he was on the team, the team, 3 of those years, the team won world championships, and the other team, they won the pennant, but were unable to win that championship. He played with Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, and I had read an article where he once did bring Babe Ruth into Oliphant, and he brought him to the high school where he was able to meet a lot of the students. They were roommates, and again, 4 years as a Yankee and 4 checks, postseason checks, and only playing 161 games during those 4 years. But again, because of his defensive skills, he was a valued part of the Yankee team. Now, after graduating from Oliphant High School in 1915, he first went on to Mansfield State College, but he only spent a year there. And like Shylock, World War I this time again drew him into the military. And during his time over in Europe, he suffered poisoning from mustard gas and was honorably discharged. Upon discharge, he enrolled at Lafayette College in 1919 and played football and baseball there for 4 years. Gazella graduated from Lafayette with a degree in chemical engineering. So in addition to being a great athlete, he was also a great student. And right after graduation, he did sign with the Yankees. And part of his contract with the Yankees said that he had to stay on the Yankee roster in 1923. And that was the reason that he was able to win a share of the World Series that year, a share of the proceeds. And he also after that he was down in the minors for about 3 years, and he came back in 1927, 28, and 29. Those 3 years with the Yankees. While at Lafayette, he was an excellent athlete. At Halfin, he was a quarterback, but at Lafayette, he was a halfback. And he was a member of the 1921 Lafayette football team. That Lafayette at that time was national power. And they shut out 5 opponents that year and had a perfect 9-0 record. So again, he was an outstanding athlete, outstanding student. And then there's Pete Latzo, who I spoke about earlier today. And Pete was not a native of Oliphant. He actually was brought up in Coleraine, which is a patch town near Hazleton. But during his early years as a boxing professional, he lived in Scranton, and his claim to fame came in 1926 when he pulled off one of the biggest upsets in professional boxing history, when he scored a 12-round unanimous decision over Mickey Walker before 12,000 fans at the Watrous Armory in Scranton to win the world welterweight title. Going into the fight, Walker, who had won the title in 1922, had lost only once in 31 fights. And cartoonist Ham Fisher based his comic book hero, Joe Palooka, on Latzo after meeting him outside a pool hall in Wilkes-Barre. Fisher was impressed with Latzo's personality, his sportsmanship, and physique. At its height, the Joe Palooka comic strip appeared in over 900 newspapers across the country. It ran from 1930 to 1984 before being canceled. Now, Latzo's boxing career lasted 15 years to 1934. He appeared in 146 fights and won 93 of those, and 25 of those were by knockout. Next, we have Terry Pegula. Terry Pegula was born in Carbondale, and today he is one of the most recognizable figures in American sports. He owns the Buffalo Sabres of the National Hockey League, and with a consortium of private equity firms, he also owns the Buffalo Bills of the National Football League. Pegula serves as the president of both teams. As of early 2026, Pegula's estimated net worth is $9.3 billion. He ranks and has ranked 418th on Forbes magazine's World Billionaire list. He also has interest in natural gas development, real estate, entertainment, and with his Major League football and hockey teams. The son of a mine worker, he's a second-generation Rusyn American. He graduated from Scranton Prep in 1969, and as a teen, his first job was driving a watering truck in the mines around Carbondale. After high school, Pegula received a scholarship to Penn State University, where he started as a mathematics major, but then switched to petroleum and natural gas engineering. Upon graduation, he joined Getty Oil in Victoria, Kansas. With a $7,500 loan from his family and his friends, he founded East Resources in 1981. Over the next 3 decades, Pegula built the business into one of the largest privately held companies in the country. By 2000, his company had made its first discoveries in central New York State and north central Pennsylvania, a region that's increasingly known for its rich Marcellus shale gas. In 2010, after 30 years, Pegula sold his company to Royal Dutch Shell for $4.7 billion. And with that $4.7 billion, you can see he's almost double that in 15 years. And that allowed him to buy a lot of real estate, especially in Buffalo, where his teams are located. Pegula lives in Florida most of the time. The name may sound familiar. His daughter is a member of the World Tennis Association Tour, and she's currently ranked second in the world among women. So again, I'm sure that Pegula's wealth has really benefited his daughter, and again, in her own right, an amazing athlete. Finally, we have John Terpak, and John is from Mayfield, and he's a first-generation Rusyn and the son of a coal miner also. He spent most of his formative years in Mayfield. He gained international fame as a weightlifter in the 1930s and 1940s. Terpak represented the United States at the 1936 Olympic Games in Berlin, where he placed 5th in his division. And later, he finished 4th place in the 1948 Olympiad in London. No doubt he would have probably had a lot more Olympic medals under his belt if there had not been a World War II, because this forced cancellation of the 1940 and 1944 Olympic Games, and probably a chance to win some world championships as well. Terpak's career was one of continuous improvement. Late weightlifting fans were surprised by his physique, which was more like a soccer player's, and by the ease in which he lifted. He enjoyed great success competing in weightlifting world championships, winning the 1937 middleweight gold medal in Paris and the light heavyweight gold in 1947 in Philadelphia. Terpak coached the 1968 and 1972 United States Olympic weightlifting teams. Following his time as an active weightlifter, he transitioned and joined the York Barbell Company in 1935. And at the time of his death in 1993, he was the CEO and president of York Barbell. So that's pretty much the extent of the people that were from Lackawanna County. I would venture to say that at least 20 of the athletes came from the anthracite areas of Wilkes-Barre and Hazleton and Scranton. And again, they all really did well. And as you see, many of them, some of them did well in their sports and then in their post athletic careers. And again, it's a tribute to their hard work and dedication. And that concludes my presentation.
Thanks very much, George. That's a great story. Often, sports is so important to communities, and there's so many ties to industry. Often we find when we're doing research, looking for either an individual or a particular company, a silk mill or a small manufacturing company, the only results we can find online are results of their bowling leagues or the industrial league baseball teams. So that was certainly a part of the Scranton landscape, different community and team sports. Thanks again, George, for joining us and sharing your research. We love it when different members of our community reach out to us to share information that they found in their histories about their families or their communities or anything that interests them. So if anyone has information, has a program that they'd like to share with us, please do let us know. We're always looking for more stories to share about our local history. Our next topic in March, we'll still be continuing our theme of community. I'll be joined by Dr. Louis Esposito, who was part of the NEPA Language and Life Project last summer in Scranton, looking at different dialects in the Cole region and figuring out why we all say Hena. So he'll be joining us in March for more information about what he found in his NEPA Language and Life Project. So again, everyone, thank you very much for joining us and have a great weekend.